afternoon, everybody. Well, as you know, we've got another build to work on. It's the 30cc Avistar made by Great Plains. I had to stop there for a second because I'm used to saying Avistar 40, the Hobbyco used to have. Still have one out in the shop. But we got this behemoth to get started on. I kind of went through the manual. If you notice, it's only about as 20% thick as the PT20 kit that we're building as well. Reason is, it's 80% done for us already. So let's reset the camera right quick. I'll show you how to prep your work surface for what we're about to do. Okay, so I'll see you in just a second. Okay, here we are with a somewhat clean workbench, workable workbench, I guess you could say. One thing that we want to keep in mind, we are dealing with a product that is mostly finished. In other words, all the covering is already done. It's already tight. In this case, this covering job on this airplane is superb. We don't want to mess it up. But we are going to have to place it on our workbench upside down. We don't want to scratch it up. Now, this is an old plastic table. It's got CA bumps on it, saw marks, all that good stuff. We don't want to really scratch it up. Remember those shop towels I told you about in that video, building supplies? Well, this is one place that's going to come in handy. Or you could put an old, like some outdoor carpet down if you want. I just don't have any, so I'm going to use my blue shop towels. It's soft, and it'll kind of cushion some of the imperfections in the table so we don't wind up scratching our wing half. Now, I don't think that's going to be enough. We'll see, this wing half is going to be 45 inches long. Oh, man. We'll start there. I want to place two down. Now, see, these aren't wasted. Waste not, want not, really. So, what I'll do after I get done with these, not only use it, I use it for both wing hats, but I'll fold them up and we'll use them to clean up other things too. We won't throw them out. Remember, I told you I was a tight ass when it came to supplies. Okay, now we got our surface covered. I'm going to grab our left wing panel. That's what's recommended in the manual. And the first thing we're going to do, though it don't need it, we're still going to do it so you know what to do. We're going to inspect the covering to see if there's anything we need to tighten up first. Because sometimes as these things sit in their boxes in a warehouse, it gets hot, it gets cold, the covering will actually shrink and expand and wrinkle up eventually is what happens. So let's grab our panel and give it a look over. This thing is a monster. Oh yeah, perfect. I'm going to set it this way. I'm going to grab one more shop towel. Now, it's going to be kind of hard to see in the light or in the camera. But what I'm doing, I'm looking at the reflections like you would a paint job on a car. You look down the paint job and you look for any kind of wrinkles, waves, or anything like that. And it's been set in a couple days. You know, keep in mind I do work for a living like the rest of you guys. And I'm just wiping it down. Also, this gives you an opportunity to get hands-on with the model to feel for any imperfections. And I mean, really, you want to see the perfect wing panel that is covered with monocoat. This is it. This is what it looks like. I mean, if you looked in a textbook, there was a textbook on it. Light bulb. This is what that would look like. Want to get any kind of dust, or if you have animals, sometimes the pet hair can stick to it. So we're just wiping it down gently, making sure everything is good and tight. A couple of, yeah, no, that's good. Perfect. Man, that really, really does look awesome. Okay, let's get situated. You want to take your left wing panel, put it on your bench. Again, we're at the point we need to be careful with it. Just be nice to it. We're going to cut some monocoat. Get our handy hobby knife. Always start with a new blade. This blade I've been carving on some wood in our PT20 build. I'm going to go ahead and pitch it. Actually, I don't pitch it. I'll save it for some more wood carving. But anytime you go to cut monocoat, you want to start with a new blade because it's sharp and you need a sharp blade to get that good cut on the monocoat. Now this airplane is optioned. You don't have to run flaps. I'm going to. The flaps are already cut. And in between, okay, the crack right here, this is our flap and this is our aileron. It comes doweled together. So you don't have to run flaps. You can just run one huge aileron. But you know, I've got enough servos. I've got enough equipment to run flaps. Why not? It's going to be plenty of aileron to maneuver this airplane around, especially with the 35cc MLD that we're going to be powering this with. Now what we're going to do is kind of a Easter egg game. We're going to find our servo holes. They're already cut out, so all we got to do is just find them. The white one is easier to find. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my hobby knife, and of course you always want to cut away from you, try to get in that habit. Even though we're cutting monocoat, it's not really going to snag on you and, oh, I cut my wrist, and you're going to lay here and bleed to death in your hobby room. Always a good habit to get into. So I'm going to find my hole, which I found right here. You can kind of see the black outline, and I'm going to insert the hobby knife just like that. And then carefully, because there's a servo mount there, cut the monocoat away. You don't want to get into any of the wood. You don't want to cut out away from the hole either. Okay. Take that little guy, pull it. Get this out of the way. Now one thing that we are going to do before this is all over with, we're going to come back with our sealing iron and go around this hole, okay? But we got to get the covering out of the way first. Okay, there's that one. This is for our flap. Now the other one, towards the wingtips, for our aileron. And it's in the black, kind of black and white here in the middle. Kind of like that Michael Jackson song, am I black or white? You don't know. Another method you can use. Instead of cutting a square hole, you can also go crisscross, find the corner, insert your knife. Just make sure we're not cutting into anything we're not supposed to. Cut diagonal across. Wow. Our black makes it really tricky to see. And you just take your little triangles, cut inside about 1/16 of an inch. Got 2 layers of covering there that we're trying to go through. That makes it a little touchy on the feel. That guy. That thing. and that guy. Okay. Now that we have those open, we've exposed our string for our aileron servo right there. Okay, and what that is, we're going to tie our lead to that string off of our servo and use it to pull through the wing itself. Coffee, gotta love it. Keeps you going. Okay. Sorry about that. I got some servos here. These are out of my decathlon that we're going to use. Just to make sure that my homemade lead is going to be long enough. Just going to lay it out there. Okay. Perfect. It's a high torque servo, standard size. And then always resort to the book when you want to make sure. Not very much to it. Yeah. Okay. Just tie your string to your lead. Come out here to the end. And just pull it through. Now you have wing ribs in there to guide around, so it's not like it's gonna slide perfectly through, but a little bit of finesse. There you go. Now, piers. Okay, just it's a tight fit. There we go. Servo in. Now with this airplane, you want your control horn side to be towards the leading edge of the servo, or of the wing. But we got that one in. We're going to go ahead and put the screws in it while it's there. We got our lead where it needs to be. So I'm going to grab 4 servo screws. Charging some batteries too. Just got my youngest son's cadet going. Okay. What we need to do now is pre-drill our holes for our servo screws. And the perfect thing I've found for that is our hole location marker. That little guy right there, it's handy for a dozen things. In the manual it says get a 1/16 drill, pre-drill all your holes. Same thing, just not as bulky. So we'll just set that, give her a few quick turns, and we're through. And it sounds like the rest of my family's on. It sounds like a herd of elephants running upstairs when they walk in the door. Like like that. Get our holes drilled here. Like so. Like that. And now we can install our servo screws. And they're these little guys right here with the neck on them. And look how easy everything goes together for you. Just like that. Want to say hi?
Hi. You ain't.
Hey. Behave. No, behave.
Dad, are you working on your avatar?
Do what, buddy?
Are you working on your avatar?
I sure am.
What? How are you already ready that far?
It's an ARF, son. Almost ready to fly. Yeah. I could pull your leg and say I'm just a fast builder, but
Yeah, I'm not one of pretty fast builder.
I'm an alright builder though, huh?
Yeah.
Keep your kids involved in the hobby if you can. If they show an interest. If they show an interest, Ryan, stop please. If they show an interest, keep them involved. Get them involved. Because like I once heard, you show them the hobby of aviation, get them interested in it, they won't have the money for drugs. Okay, folks. That's all I'm going to do for right now because the family's now home. I need to go spend some time with them. And really, that's all we're going to do is just do the same thing with our flap servo. And then I'll pick back up when we go for our control horn installation, okay? Thanks for watching so far. Now that we have our servos installed, our flap and our aileron servos, one thing we need to do is take our control surfaces, our flap and our aileron, which are currently doweled together, so it's just like one big aileron. We need to center it on the control surface. And what I did, I lined up the trailing edge of the aileron and the wing with a little bit of masking tape. I using that to hold it in place because we need our control surface in level flight position. So our next step is we need to center our servos. They could be anywhere right now. They could be full, extended left, right, up, down, whichever way it could be. So we need to center those. So what I did, I've got my receiver here. And I'm going to take our, I believe this is our flap, and that's channel number 6. And then we're going to take our aileron, which is channel number 1, and get those guys plugged in. Okay? I've got our battery pack here. And then our transmitter, I'm running the Futaba TC7 on the fast system. And what we need to do, I selected a model, and I called it 30 Avistar. That's all it, or AVIST. That's all it had room for. But we go into the programming of that, set all of our throw rates at 100% on dual high and low. We'll set those later on after the build is complete. And also in our sub trim, that's at 0. And our trims are also set at 0, our physical trims. So we'll go ahead and just power that on. That's all we need to do, and get it a little bit away, you know. That way we're not having any kind of overdoing it. And then we'll plug our battery in. All right. Kind of give it a quick check. And I got them backwards.
Got them backwards?
Yeah. So we'll plug that one into 6 and this one into 1. There we go. Just make sure we have throw there. I don't think I have a flap actually assigned to that one, which is no big deal right now. We know our aileron servo is centered. And just to center this one, we'll just kind of just plug it into the aileron slot. it's centered. Okay, that's all we need to do. So we'll go ahead and unplug our battery. Set these off to the side. Turn our transmitter back off. And what we need to do, we need to set our servo control horn, which is this right here. It'll come with your radio equipment. And typically they come, you know, all different directions. At 90 and 45 degrees, you'll have a control horn. What I did, I just took my side cutters and clipped them off, got my sanding block, sanded it down kind of smooth. So now what we'll do, we'll install our aileron control horn first. Our flap is going to be set up just a little bit different, and we'll cover that. Okay, here we are kind of over our servo. Get this situated so that don't fall over. I've got it kind of off center so I can work on it. Okay, now we know everything is centered. Take our servo screw out. This is an old servo, but I do try to put the screws back in so they don't wind up lost. Now what we do with our horn, we want it 90 degrees to the wing line or parallel to our control surface. And we'll get our teeth lined up. Try to get it as perfect as we can. Right there, that's it. Go ahead and push that on. And install our screw. Always put your screws in place. It's always there to keep vibration from knocking it off. Jeez, I keep bumping the camera. And it's okay if we do that.
That's what it's supposed to do.
There we go. We'll just pull that back to 90 degrees. Like so. Alright, that's our aileron. Okay, here we are. Our next step is to assemble our control rod. Now this is where a little more advanced building skills are needed. It's not necessarily the beginner, but our parts we have to have are a threaded clevis, which is a 440 nut, 2 pieces of silicone to lock our clevises, and then a solder clevis. Way you tell the difference between the two, one has threads, one does not. If it doesn't have threads, it's a solder clevis. And I'm going to show you how to solder those. I'll do it on one. I'm not going to show you every one of them. But first thing we need to do is take our 440 nut and go ahead and get it threaded on. We'll go ahead and slide it back. About there. And then we'll take our threaded clevis and go ahead and install this one. We'll get it started. Make sure we don't cross thread it. Okay. And we want to give it 18 turns. And the way you can count that, there's a seam on our clevis. And you can just count those revolutions. So we'll just start there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now this is what the modeling manufacturer suggests we do, so that's what we're going to do. I don't think we'll bind with anything. And you'll have to excuse my dog barking. She was outside with us while we were cleaning up a while ago. And decided she was going to go for a swim, so she got a bath and she's drying out. She has to stay in her kennel while she's drying out so she don't get the rest of the house a sopping mess. And we'll go ahead and install, we'll slide these on here for now so they're out of the way, on there and out of the way. Because once we measure everything up and get this soldered on here, it's done deal. So we want to go ahead and get our silicone on there. Now we're going to cut the camera. We're going to shoot back to the wing, and we're going to install this end on our control surface control horn, and then we're going to get it lined up and set to go, and then we'll measure, cut, and solder our solder clevis. Okay, we got our wing back up here. We have our servo control horn at 90 degrees to the root of the wing. The reason we do that, we want to set our servo horns up to the root of the wing on each wing so we don't wind up with our ailerons with both of them going down and both of them going up when we need thumb up, aileron up. Okay? All right, now our next step, we want to put our assembled push rod into place. Now when we do this, we got a pin side and a hole side. This is my personal preference. What I always like to do is have the pin pointing towards the ground. Now our wing's upside down. You got to remember that. And we're going to set this with our pin pointing up. Now sometimes these boogers are a little tight, like that one. It'll work. We'll go in for sizing. We're going to swing this down. Okay, when we swing this down, we want it at 90 degrees of the horn. Okay, so we got a line this way that's 90 degrees. We want to create a line this way that's 90 degrees. One thing that's handy about our aileron servo, it's right on our stripe here. So we can use that to check it against. So I'm eyeballing down this line here, and I want to get it to 90 degrees. Now, this is all an effort to mark our control rod where we need to cut it. Now, theoretically, it should already be there. We just need to mark it and get it lined up so we know where to solder it. And also, it helps us place our aileron control horn in place. Now, I'm going to set this up on the very bottom of the control horn to allow for maximum throw. I'll program in the proper throws. Now, if you don't have a computer radio or you cannot program your throws, set it up in the middle one. That way you're not just maxing it out right away. Okay, now what I'm going to do, slide that on there. And what I'm looking for, I want this row of dots lined up right on the crack of that, of the aileron. Yeah, we're going to have to trim some. Now, bear with me while I get this set. Okay. That's not going to allow us to do that. So I'm going to trim a little bit off of that. So we get our side cutters. Right here. I'm just going to trim a little off of that so I can get it set where it needs to be. Now be careful when you do this. Number one, you don't want to cut too much off. And number two, these ends, they fly when you cut them. So don't be poking an eye out or anything. And don't sand those nubs off. Those actually help anchor the horn down when we screw it down. It kind of makes a pain in the butt to kind of set up. But they're actually there for a purpose. All right. When I get our horn lined up with a crack in our aileron between the aileron and the wing, I'm going to take our handy dandy marking tool here and pre-drill our holes for our screws. Now, it says in the manual not to drill all the way through, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to start the hole like so. Being careful not to go all the way through at this point. Now this is all hardware that Great Plains included on this kit, so it's all really, really good hardware. Okay, now that we have our holes pre-drilled, we're going to get 4 of our number 4 sheet metal screws. Got a nice Phillips head. And remember, sheet metal screws are the ones that are pointed on the end. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to get them started here. And when we screw these down, you got to be careful, okay? Because remember, we are screwing into balsa, and it won't take much to strip them out. So you got to develop that feel of how tight is tight enough. And this last one, go ahead and run it down there. And while I'm working here, I'm also just kind of keeping an eye on our trailing edge down here at the end, make sure we're still level. Just want to snug it up, okay? You'll feel it want to stop, and when it wants to stop, that's pretty good. Not like that. All right, there we go. Okay. Now it's time for the marking part. I'm going to make 2 marks across, okay? Because we do need to cut some more off of this. That way our servo horn is free to move around. So right about here where our barb is, this is actually what's going to hold our silicone tubing piece to keep these locked down. Right about there. Actually, really what you need is about 1/8 of an inch or so poking on it. But just for a reference point, I'm going to mark there to cut. And just as a reminder, I'm going to draw some hash marks there. That way I know that part needs to go. And then also... Oh, all right. Sorry about that. Okay, and I'm going to draw another mark right here at the base of the clevis so I know where it needs to go when we go to solder it. And you see our seam? Okay, we want to make sure that's facing us. And I'm going to draw a parallel mark right here. So when we go to solder this up, we know the orientation of the clevis as well. You know what, actually I want to make that a little bit shorter because all that out there is really unnecessary. But you do want enough poking through there so that you get a good solid weld, or a solder, if you will, to that. Okay, I'm going to get the wing off the bench and get my vise up here, and we'll have a quick tutorial on how to solder a clevis. Got our vise up here now. Now before we mount up in our vise, what I did on my paper towel here, I just made a couple reference marks because we got a little bit of sanding to do. And I also paid attention to our seam line is going to be like that with our threaded clevis, like so. Now what we want to do before we even think about doing any kind of soldering, get a little bit of sandpaper. We want to rough that up a little bit. What that does, that allows better adhesion for our solder. I got my handy dandy bench vise here. Set it up so you can see it. I'm just going to do this to hang on to it. Nothing crazy. It's just our third hand. We can get our line up and down like so. Alright, now we get our solder stuff. Let's have a discussion about solder. Do not use electrical solder for this. You want to use the kind of solder that you would use in plumbing with copper because it's a structural solder, not an electrical solder. The electrical solder is actually softer and has a lot lower melting temperature. Looks like earwax. That's actually our flux here. And you'll just get a really good bond that way, and just do that. You can't use a soldering iron either. Well, you probably could. It'd just take a lot longer. I use a butane torch. And, okay. Looks like we're ready. Now, first we have to prepare our surface. Let's grab one of my epoxy brushes. We need to put some flux on there. That actually, some people, oh, flux, whatever. I'm a firm believer it actually helps in the adhesion of it. So, liberally put your flux on there. Again, this, you can buy this at a kit at a local department store in the plumbing section. It's solder and flux and everything all together. Plenty there. If we can, a little dab inside of our clevis as well. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. Okay, here we are. Got everything prepped. Flux everywhere. We need flux, and we're going to take our clevis and slide it on to our mark and make sure our seam is lined up with our mark we applied earlier. Now the trick to this is we heat our area up first before we apply our solder. So let's go ahead and get our torch going here. So I'm going to do this right here. Still see it. Now the solder will flow wherever the flux is, and that's exactly what we want. Just like so. Okay, that's it. Don't blow on it, just let it cool naturally. And that is how you build a solder clevis. That's simple. Okay, now that we have our clevis built, or our push rod, it's time to go ahead and apply it. And just like we put it on a while ago for measuring, threaded side to the servo. And I about broke one of my rules there. We want the pin pointing down to the ground. Like so. And then we take our aileron horn. Line it up to the bottom hole. Like so. And then our pieces of silicone, slide them up over the barb on the clevis. Now one thing I did a while ago, if you noticed, I moved the silicone in front of the nut because, well, you're not going to stretch it over that nut. Move the silicone up over the barb. Run our jam nut up against that. You know, you can finger tight it, but what I'll do just as an extra measure, I'll just get my pliers, or if you have a wrench handy, kind of give it a little snugging up there. And there you have it. That's how you install your solder, make your solder linkage and get it installed. Now what I'll do later after I'm done with the build, before I give it a complete control surface check, I'll actually cut my control horn off right here and round it off, make it look nice. That way we don't have all this extra poking up in the way. But that's how you do it, and we'll set up. We're going to do the flap, and I'm not going to make you go through the whole boring thing again, because basically it's the same thing. The only difference is with our servo on center, we set our control horn up at 45 degrees to the trailing edge. That's really the only difference. I'll show you what that looks like. I apologize, I misread the manual. It's our flap servo, and I said to the root. On the ailerons, that is true, but on the flaps, we want to go point it to the tip. So we're looking at the tip, and we want to set it up at 45 degrees. About like that. And then we'll just press that down and install our screw. Just like that. Okay, and our control rod setup is basically going to be the same way as we did our aileron. I'm going to go ahead and finish this one up, and I'm going to finish up the other wing panel. When we come back, we will start on putting the fuselage together. Actually, we're going to join our wing halves and then start on the fuselage. Hey, we have all of our servos in our wing, both wings. Excuse me. Our wires have been pulled through the appropriate hole, and one thing I really recommend when you do this, it's a good time to go ahead and identify which is which. I've got my flap lead designated with an F and my aileron lead designated with an A. It's just a piece of masking tape folded around it, and then I just take a Sharpie and designate it. Okay, now before we move on, what we need to do is put a couple of dowels in. I'm just going to do the left wing panel because it has all the parts. We have the forward dowel and then the alignment dowel in the back. The bigger dowel is the one that goes up front, and then the smaller dowel is the one for alignment. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to mark this. Typically, I don't. I have a big airplane tight space here. Okay, you can see our hole there, and it goes all the way back. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to mark it, because we have to epoxy this in. It's going to be a tight fit, like so. Okay. And I'm just going to mark the dowel here with a line, like so. And then while we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and get our alignment dowel in place as well. That's our smaller one. And it goes in this little hole in the back. It's going to be a tight fit as well. Oh, wow. Surprisingly, it went. We're just going to go about halfway or so. And then we'll mark that as well. And the reason we're marking that is just a line for epoxy. Okay, we'll slide this back out of the way a little bit. We'll get our epoxy ready here. And then we'll get our dowels out. We need a mixing cup. Where did they all go? I see where they are. Okay. One thing that I forgot to mention in the PT20 build about epoxy, it actually, the bigger batches, the better it works. That's the way it always has been. That brush ain't worth a shit. It's got hairs poking all over the place. So if you need to mix more, see, this is probably a 12 drop application. I'm going to go ahead and go with 15, what heck, or even 20. It's always better to have more than not enough anyway. So let's start with our resin. Let me get this started so we don't have to wait for it. That should do nicely. Now I know you're just only going to see 2 dowels, but I've got the other wing to do as well. I'll just do that off camera. Mixed up real good here. And if it don't mix up really well, the catalyst reaction won't take place, and you'll wind up with a bunch of slimy goo instead of good dried epoxy. Again, I'm using 30-minute. I only use 30-minute, even where it says use 5-minute. I use 30-minute because if it's a bond, it needs to be a good bond. And 30-minute will give you that. And it has a nice, smooth finish after it cures. All right. We'll go ahead and set that back one first. So I'm just going to get my dowel, put a little goop on there. Now these dowels, we only have to glue one side. This one is for alignment. Now it'll just temporarily poke in the other one. See, we'll slide that back there and we have a whole bunch of excess that come off, which is fine, but what we got to do is wipe that off because these wings have to seat up against one another. If we have a big goober of epoxy out there, that won't happen. So we want to make sure we wipe that off. So they'll go up to one another. And seat well. Man, I just can't get over how well this thing is put together. It's all wood. There's absolutely no plastic in this thing. Some of yards you get for mass production purposes and things like that, they have plastic molded parts so they can crank out a lot of ARFs and just makes it look cheap. But not this thing. It's all wood and I mean professionally covered. I just can't get over it. Okay, and now we're going to do our forward dowel. Now what this does, this is actually where we're going to plug it into our fuselage up front, just behind the windscreen. We get that, and we will put a little inside here as well. Just coil the brush, and it fits surprisingly into the hole. So we'll just do that. And we'll slide this bad boy in there. Go up to our line. And it's like so. Kind of give it a twist so that epoxy definitely goes all the way around. This is, you really don't want a failure here. So Want to make sure it gets everywhere. Again, wiping off the excess. Keeping it off that beautiful monocoat job. Now, if you're doing this, you farted around too long, your epoxy starts to set, you can take some of this acetone and dip your towel in it, and it'll help that stuff come off a little easier. And before handling your wing here, you got a little bit of epoxy on your fingers. Be sure to wipe that off. Get that off your hands, because when you handle your airplane, those fingerprints will transfer to your airplane, really making it look ugly. So, well, there's that. I'm going to go ahead and do the other wing, and we're going to let the epoxy set up, and then we'll move on with the build. Thanks for watching. We have our wing halves done. We installed all 4 servos, flap servos and aileron servos. We got the leads put through the holes. We inserted the mounting dowels and the alignment dowel into the wing half. You see the other one over there setting up. And when you open the box, you see this black metal tube. What's this darn thing for? Well, you might think it's to thwack the kids when they get a little too close or get a little too rowdy, you know, just kind of take care of the situation, drag them off. Not only can you use it for that, you can also use it to join the wing halves. If you see in the wing panel behind me, the round hole. What this does, this slides into the hole on one wing panel. And then you take the other wing panel and slide it on as well. With the alignment dowel, everything goes together. Then you seat the wing into the wing saddle on the fuselage. And you take your 2 1/4 20 bolts and you bolt it down. You have a secure wing that way. And what this does, this reinforces the wing both for positive and negative G's. It just basically doesn't necessarily hold things together, but it's for reinforcement up and down on the wing. That's what this thing is for. Now, on our next step, we are going to set our tail surfaces on the fuselage. Now, one thing I'm going to do is, because I don't have room on the workbench, I'm going to have to do it out on the floor here in the downstairs room. This is huge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the wing on the airplane. Then I'm going to go to the back of the airplane. I'm going to set the elevator. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to look. And I'm going to see that the elevator is parallel to the wing. It's not like this, okay? There's a picture in the manual. I'll include it in on this, right here, actually. And once I verify that that is straight, we'll set it up here on the workbench, and we'll set our tail feathers, our horizontal and vertical stabilizer, along with the rudder, which is already attached, and the elevator that's already attached. We'll epoxy those, and that'll conclude this week's episode of Big Sky Hobby Corner 30cc Avistar build. Okay, I'll set the fuselage and set the wing as well, and we're pretty darn straight. So our next step is to actually remove the covering. Please don't fall. Down below, I got to get you guys a better vantage point, where our elevator is going to go. And just like when we were hunting down the servo holes, kind of got to do the same thing here. I'm using my thumb and I'm pressing along, and I feel the slide. Now this is on both sides. The elevator is going to slide in here, just like those little balsa airplanes we used to play with when we were kids. So I'm going to take my knife, insert it, and just follow along. When it stops, don't force it, because that's the end of the wood. Come up. I'm going to come and do the same thing here. Just like that. And looky there. All right. Just kind of saw that out of there. I'm going to do the other side. There's a wood block here that they put in to give that some rigidity. after it's built. I'm going to have to move some of that, if not all of it, to install the elevator. Okay, we do remove the entire wood block because the rudder has a section that's going to fit in there. And just kind of gently pop those off there because there's a little bit of glue there. Kind of hold that in place. Set that. Now what we do is test fit everything. Just like on our PT20 build, we trial fit before we glue. And then also there's going to be some covering that I'm sure we're going to have to remove as well. Get it centered up like I just did not. We want to slide it all the way forward in the saddle. Now what we're going to do is take a measurement from inside to the tip of the elevator, or excuse me, horizontal stabilizer, and make sure they're the same. Now you'll probably find it easier to do it on the back here all the way out to the tip. So let's get my tape measure and put it out there. That is right at 15 inches. We'll do the same here, and I want the same measurement. I'll be darned, it is. I can do that twice if I wanted to. While we know it's perfect, we'll get our Sharpie marker here. We'll draw a line. We got some excess covering there that's in the way. Now the reason we're doing this, we want as much wood in touch with one another as we can make happen. Gives more bonding surface for the glue. So we'll draw a line here. Like so. Now we'll flip it over and draw those lines as well. We're doing this before we put the rudder in because, well, if we had the rudder in place, it'd be rather difficult. So we'll draw our line here. Well, excess monocoat. Yeah, probably notice I shake a lot. That's why I didn't become a surgeon. I just stuck with machine work. Went to the doctor about my shakes. And he asked me if I drink a lot of coffee. And I said, well, no, I spill most of it. All right. Got a little bit of excess monocoat from the fuselage over here as well. How's that? That's off the elevator, I think. No, I'll just run there and get rid of that. Uh-oh. It's okay, I got a line. Go by right there. You know, that was off of the elevator. We'll Just take that out of the airplane and finish that when it's time. What happened? I hope I didn't lose. Okay, we're still good. Now we should be good to go on our rudder. That'll slide in place where the wood block we removed, where that goes. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do all the work off camera, but you can kind of get the idea how that goes. And I'm gonna epoxy this, and we'll see you next week. Okay, here we are. We are ready to install our control, or our horizontal and vertical stabilizer with rudder and elevator already attached. I found out there's a trick to installing this. You kind of got to do it all at the same time, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I've got a 30 drop mix here ready to go, so we'll go ahead and get this mixed up. That looks pretty darn good. No, I'm not throwing that on the floor. I've got a garbage box down there. Okay, first thing I want to do is take our elevator. We're going to coat this thing on the wood. Just kind of run it up to that monocoat line. It'll also help kind of seal that down as well. Alright, this thing is so big, I'm sorry I can't get it all in the camera. I got my wife, she's upstairs because she's going to be busy tomorrow on Valentine's Day. She's actually making a very nice Valentine's dinner for me. So I definitely want to take part in that. So after we get these slid into place, that'll probably be it for today. And tomorrow we'll be working on the PT20 build. Get some epoxy down the hole because that's where the rudder will slide into place. Go ahead and get this bottom side. We're going to take our time and do it right. I also got to remember we only have 30 minutes or less. It's already trying to stick on me. Side there really good. Okay. Now our rudder. On this, I'm really focusing on the parts that are going to be in contact with the other wood. This. I was visiting with a viewer the other day, and he says, you know, I can really appreciate what you're doing. Not only just taking the time to show you guys how to do some of this stuff, and as I claimed before, I'm not a world-class builder. I can just glue some stuff together and it flies. But he says I keep it real. I'm not like that other channel that builds all the wacky airplanes, you know, just to see if it'll fly. Mostly out of foam and electric. Though I do have electric airplanes. You won't see none of that really on this channel unless my son's flying one. But I don't edit out the mistakes. And I said, Rod, that's exactly it. It's got to be real. You know, I'm not a perfect builder. And there are some really good builders out there, but nobody's perfect. And I want to keep it real, just like you're sitting here with me. And that's what he said. You know, it's just like I'm sitting there with you. And kids come in and start their stuff. You know, it's all fun and games and funny, and he can appreciate that. And I hope everybody else does too, because, I mean, we're keeping it 100% real on this. Okay, one more swab of that in there. Make sure we get everything covered. Okay, now here's the tricky part. I'm going to take our rudder and our elevator. We're going to go ahead and slide them together like that. Now, I got glue right here, so I got to kind of get moving. We're going to slide this together. I'm going to pop this up just a little bit because we have to seat at up top there. We don't want to come completely out. Just like that. Slide our elevator all the way forward. Make sure that's all the way there. And seat that just like that. Okay. Okay, I took the camera off the stand there so you can kind of see what's going on. We have a block here that needs to be seated in the hole. Make sure that's down all the way. And our elevator is all the way forward in the hole. Okay. I thank you guys for joining us during this build, and stay tuned. Maybe this evening we'll come back and install the landing gear later. I don't know. Depends. We're doing our Valentine's Day thing today. So anyway, thanks for watching.